するまで起きない。
ニケ様、早く済ませてください。
こういうの久々なんだし、ちょっとサービスしろよ。
サービスって。
She was just a normal country bumpkin girl until her father announced that someone will have to marry the Sun Kingdom's king. They all refuse but are forced to pick someone, so they do rock, paper, scissors, which leads to Nike getting chosen. Despite her beauty and elegance, she has the personality of a peasant, making the others wonder if she can fulfill her role as a princess. What adventures will she embark on? Who will she meet? Let's find out as we follow Nike on her journey to change history. After recently learning our protagonist, Nike is a princess, she realizes it's time to stop being a country bumpkin. Despite this, however, she still goes on crazy adventures, showing the beauty of the world. As they get closer to the shore, Nike starts to show more and more excitement around arriving. Then once they arrive at the shore, Nike heads into the Sun Kingdom, a distinguished kingdom she has yet to explore. Once she gets there, however, her excitement begins to fade once she realizes the harsh reality ahead of her. Despite this, she ventures forward, hoping to make a name for herself in the kingdom. After looking around, she discovers a fruit shop, so the owner offers once, hoping to win her over. After he tells her the price of it, usually she refuses to take it, calling it way too expensive. When she steps into the center, she gets knocked down from the crowd, telling her to stop being a country bumpkin. With this being too expensive, she decides to try her luck at a tavern, but gets no such luck. The clerk tells her if she steps 1 foot into this place, all these drunken men will come after her. Following this, she leaves the inn and walks away, but is approached by 2 short men. They inform her that it's very cheap and it comes with all you can eat for beautiful women. She gets excited and hands her suitcase over, but they take it and run away. Following this, Nike tries to chase after them, however she passes out from exhaustion. The next morning, once she wakes up, she finds a family looking after her. They offer her food and tell her that her stomach is being too loud. She begins eating the food and introduces herself to the others as a daughter of a neighbouring kingdom. They ask her why she is alone, to which she explains she wanted to experience the kingdom for what it is. The girl tells her that the Sun Kingdom is filled with bad people, asking her to be careful. They then ask her why she is in the Sun Kingdom in the first place, to which she explains for marriage. She informs them she is to marry the king of their country, and they all laugh. Following this, Nike explains that she lost in rock, paper, scissors to one of her sisters, forcing her to be the one to marry him. She was informed beforehand that the Sun King is known as a fat, bald devil. After telling her story, the others don't believe it, even the father, who laughs at her story. On the other hand, a group of shady men talk about intercepting the princess. They talk about Nike, telling the others they have never heard of this princess before. They decide if she isn't good looking enough, then they will have bad relations with her kingdom. He says if she has bad social skills, then he is going to kill her, even if she is a princess. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. Would you have volunteered to become the Sun Kingdom's heir? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now back to the recap. The 2 grunts who took her bag are then seen sitting next to this mysterious figure, talking about what they will do with their spoils. He overhears this and asks to hear more about what they are talking about. Nike, on the other hand, changes into a new outfit provided by Mina, the older sister of the 2. Liza, the younger sister, tells Nike that if she was lying about all this, she would make it more believable. Because of this, they let her stay with them for a couple days and help out with their work. Liza gets excited after learning she will be staying with them, so she decides to give Nike a tour around the city. As they walk, Nike is impressed by the various technological advancements, such as a water well accessible to anyone. Liza tells Nike that thanks to the king, they are able to live much more comfortably. Nike then asks where her mum is, to which Liza explains that she died in a battle within the town years back. She wishes that her mum could see how beautiful the kingdom has become. Following this, they head back and are found out by the 2 weasels who stole her bag. They talk about their mission, kidnapping the princess, which catches the father's attention. He runs outside to see what's going on, and to his surprise, he finds Mina kidnapped, rather than Nike. During this, the 2 weasels run back to the meeting place, sure that they have scored big. As they run, however, they think maybe they should double-check before proceeding. After inspecting the body, they find it's an entirely different girl, saying Nike had a bigger chest. They wonder what they should do with her, but ultimately decide they should get their use out of her before returning her. When they go in to fondle her, Nike appears and tells the weasels that they made a bad decision messing with her. The fatter of the two tells her she doesn't stand a chance against her, but Nike has other plans. She uses wind magic to blow them back, ultimately saving Mina in the process. After this, Nike realizes she is putting them in danger. With her presence, she embarks on a new journey. With the two weasels to guide her to the king, she is sure that she will have no trouble making it. She then gives the family a small gift before leaving, throwing a towel into the air and slicing it up. This makes the appearance of cherry blossoms falling from the sky a wonderful spectacle. After this happens, the man who enlisted the two weasels is approached by one of his grunts. He refers to the man as the general and tells him they were unable to apprehend Nike. Following this, Nike arrives at the king's castle after a few days of travelling. Despite announcing herself to the front guards, they didn't believe her, so they beat her up a bit. After realizing she was the real princess, they guide her to the king's chambers. After arriving contrary to the rumors, the king is a handsome young man named Livius. After seeing he is just a child, she calls him too little, to which the king counters by telling her he thought he was getting the hottest. Following this, he tells her that the real reason he called for her is to see her power. He asks her to make it rain, but Nike has other plans, grabbing the king's face and playing around with him. After she does this, guards come in to apprehend her, showing how savage Nike really is. She resists the guards and shows her courage, which makes the king want to see more of this side. He then imprisons her as a joke and informs her that he has conquered the world, telling her someone like her doesn't faze him. Later this day, the king meets with his top officials and tells them what happened. They ask him what he plans to do with her, and he informs them she will become their plaything. The officials get excited, thinking they will get a go at her, but the king reminds them she is his. Nike, on the other hand, is seen still residing in the cell, wondering if she should just break out. After her stomach grumbles again, she decides to break the bars of the cell and escape so she can eat. During this, the king meets with his attendant, who tells him he needs to eat better. The attendant then leaves after receiving the documents he came for, leaving the king alone. As the king talks of how boring going over documents is, Nike emerges and solves his boredom. She gets on top of him, making the king ask when she fell in love with him. This angers Nike, but before she can do anything, she falls down because of her grumbling stomach. She then tells the king that if he wants to see her use her powers, then he needs to at least feed her. This makes the king remember a time he met with a blonde woman talking about rain. She tells him that he is the Blessed One, and that everything will be alright if he stays by her side. Then, Nike wakes up from this dream, wondering if she was looking at the king's past memories. The second she gets out of bed, a group of maids emerge and tell her they are here to help. She is unsure how to act, her having lived her whole life as a country bumpkin. After this, she heads to breakfast, where the king complains about having to order so much food. Then Nike enters the room in a flamboyant dress, making the king's heart skip a beat. Nike, however, asks why she has to wear something like this, telling him she is unable to move freely. Then she sees flowers in the background and runs to their side. She tells the king this is what she meant by seeing new things, but the king doesn't seem impressed. He tells her that they are just flowers, which makes Nike a little upset. He doesn't understand why she is angry, so the two go their separate ways without talking. Later that day, however, the king still thinks about what happened, so he asks his attendant if he was wrong. Before he gets an answer, he sees Nike staring off into the sky on top of one of the many towers within the palace. He decides to go talk to her, where he overhears her contemplating whether she was right. He asks what she is doing, and to which she explains she is looking at the stars. He tells her stars are just stars and explains a bit of his past, someone telling him he shouldn't over-appreciate things. This makes Nike think, but she ends up sneezing from being outside for too long. The king gives her his jacket as a kind gesture, and this warms the two up to each other. The next day they spend time together in the Sun Kingdom's garden, having fun playing around and eating food. After both of them get soaked from pushing each other into a pond, the king reveals a hidden side to him. He begins expressing some of his feelings, but is interrupted by Nike pushing him out of the way of an incoming arrow. Following this, Nike ends up getting a bad fever, being forced into bed. The attendant, Neil, informs the king that the assassin got away as well. The king, however, doesn't show any empathy towards Nike, telling Neil that the whole situation is fun. During this, Nike dreams of the woman and the king, again making her wonder what the story behind it is. Once she wakes up, she's approached by the maids, who tell her she needs to stay in bed. She asks what happened to the king, and they explain his plans. Apparently the king is using this assassination attempt as a way to finally bring down the rebels for good. After hearing this, Nike tries to protest, but Neil enters and informs her that she is to go back home. During this, the general is revealed to be the one who has been after the king and the princess. He tells his grunts, despite failing this attempt and being banished from the kingdom, he won't give up. Nike, on the other hand, rides in a carriage alongside Neil, complaining that she is being sent home. Neil explains that it was the king's order, not his, and he is simply fulfilling his orders. He continues by explaining that the king grew up in a middle-class family and was able to become king through perseverance. He explains, however, that despite him ascending to the throne, his mother was still assassinated, making the king a very careful person. Neil explains this, telling Nike that she is being sent home out of her own protection. Then suddenly they are forced to stop after a large explosion happens within the palace. Nike rushes back to see what happened while the general is freed from prison by his grunts. Once Neil arrives, he learns that everything above the third floor is in flames, so they don't know if the king is safe or not. Thankfully, however, the king is safe, emerging at the top of a tower to witness Nike's power. As she sings, the air begins to tremble, revealing a power unknown to the people before her. As if the air responds to her voice, clouds begin to form over the kingdom, bringing down rain like never before. With the kingdom having been in a drought, the rain is like a miracle to the people. Eventually, Nike finishes her song and clears the clouds from the sky, ending the rain. After this happens, the palace somehow has the fire extinguished from it, revealing a rainbow overhead. Once he sees this, all the king remembers his mother and smiles for the first time since Nike has arrived. After this happens, Nike goes to meet with the king, telling him if she wasn't here he would be in trouble. The king then asks if that was the full extent of her power, telling her that it wasn't pleasing at all. He informs her that her rain tasted funny, and it made him soaking wet. However, despite this, the rainbow made him happy. Nike asks if this is all he has to say and decides to leave him again. Then suddenly the king gets in close to Nike and grabs her hair while proclaiming she needs to remember who she belongs to. A week passes and Nike begins to steadily adjust to her new lifestyle. Despite her soft bed and lavish lifestyle, she is still not comfortable with the king sleeping with her. He tells her that they are getting married, so she should be used to these kinds of things. He then informs her that they have a serious problem on their hands, asking if her breasts shrunk. After this happens, they head to breakfast where the king tells Nike they will be having a party soon. He asks her to use her powers to give the guests a show, but Nike refuses. She tells him that summoning the rain is a sacred ritual, not just anything she can do whenever she wants. After hearing this, the king becomes enraged, asking what the point of having a power is if she can't use it. Then the king goes to meet with his high-ranking officials, where they tell him to make Nike a better wife. The old bastards become excited after learning that Nike will be attending the party as well. During this, Nike lies on her bed and stares at flowers next to her bed. She wonders if they are also from the Sun Kingdom, thinking the king didn't like flowers. Then once she falls asleep, someone enters her room without her knowing. Once she wakes up the next morning, nothing is abrupt, but rather she is surprised to learn the king got up before she did. She then goes out to meet with Neil, where she watches as the king works early in the morning. Neil tells her that he has had a tough life and works hard so he doesn't experience it again. Then some randoms emerge and introduce themselves to Nike. They tell her they are nobles, and they introduce an ambassador from a neighbouring kingdom. He starts trash-talking her, asking if she is having fun playing house with the king. As they talk bad about her, the king suddenly emerges and tells the others that they need to watch their tongue. After this happens, Nike asks the king when he got up, to which he informs her he didn't sleep. With him pulling an all-nighter, he asks Nike if he can have a lap pillow. She reluctantly agrees to his request and hears the king talk about his past. He tells her that the sun didn't always be this bright, sharing that he gets annoyed from it sometimes. He then tells her that when he saw the rain, he lost that annoyance and became at ease for once. After she hears this, Nike asks him if he gets so stressed, then he should enlist others to do his job, but this angers the king. He tells her that he built this kingdom and she needs to worry about her own business. Later that day, Nike sits next to a window and reveals how she learned the rain summoning technique. Years ago, her grandma introduced her to the power, telling her she needs to be careful where she uses it. She tells Nike, however, that her rain can bring joy to others, so she shouldn't be afraid to use it. Following this, she goes to look at the flowers placed in her room. She thanks the maids for putting them in her room, but they inform her that they are hand-picked by the king every day. This makes Nike wonder what his intentions are, so she decides to go watch him sleep. After getting ready to make a move, Neil appears behind her, telling her she is being bold. He then presents a veil to Nike and tells her that he has been taking this drug nightly since his mother's death. However, recently he has stopped taking this thanks to Nike's presence. This makes Nike realize how hard he tries to please the people, and she gains some admiration for him. On the day of the party, various officials meet with the king, one of which being the random ambassador. He apologizes for his rude behavior but moves on to asking where Nike actually is. The king, however, is unsure where she is himself, so he is unable to tell them when Nike will appear. After this happens, wind begins to blow and they overhear Nike singing, ringing through the room. Neil then introduces Nike and tells the others that she is the spirit wielder they have all heard about. Once she steps before the nobles, they recognize her beauty and wonder if she is the same person as yesterday. Nike then announces to everyone that she will be their entertainment for the day. As she begins to sing her song, clouds form around the sky, making the nobles stunned to see the rain. The king then recognizes her beauty as well, and is glad that she was the one who became his. Following this, the ambassador emerges and asks Nike if he can kiss her hand. He tells her that she is beautiful, but the king stops her, telling him he can't just switch up like that. He then thanks her for giving them such splendid entertainment, which brings joy to Nike's eyes. She realizes how to use her power finally, and is okay with sleeping beside the king. She tries to poke him, but the king wakes up and tells her that she should be giving him a kiss instead of poking her nose. He then tells her that he won't get out of bed unless she gives him a kiss. After these events, the king goes to get his portrait drawn to keep his reign as a mark in history. While this is happening, Nike is forced to fit into a super tight dress, which causes an uproar. As she screams while putting the dress on, the kingdom's top fashion designer enters and informs Nike she needs to fit into a tighter dress. After this, Nike is brought into the back and changed into her new dress. Once the king sees her in this dress, he is impressed by how well she can rock anything. Once she gets dressed up, she is also drawn where the king's officials look at the picture. They talk about how perfect her body is, wishing they could be 50 years younger and have a chance at her. Following this, Nike is brought to lunch where she complains about not having enough food. Thankfully, the head chef gives her more food. However, the fashion designer takes the food away from her. He informs her that she needs to slim down, but then she is interrupted by Neil. He tells her to come to the king's chambers where they tell her the wedding got called off by the persists. They tell her that because she is from a foreign ethnic group, the kingdom's priests don't recognize her as an official wife. Neil informs her that if she wants to be his wife, then she needs to undergo a traditional trial. By passing through underground tunnels and finding the correct path, she can be recognized. Despite this, however, countless princesses have died from this trial, making it very dangerous. On top of this, even if she passes the trial, people may not accept her regardless. She tells them she will still try to trial even if there is danger. The king then announces that he will solve this problem himself, not wanting to expose her to danger. Later that night, Nike thinks about the king and notices he is still working. She decides to go see what he is up to, knowing this much work can't be healthy for him. During this, the king dreams of the time his late mother gave him a ring, telling him it will be used for his engagement in the future. The next day, Nike wakes up still unsure of how the situation will go. She then gets the idea to dress up as a sister and sneak past the kingdom's guards. Once she gets there, the guard tries to hit on her, but she runs off knowing she already has a man. After she gets inside of the temple, she sees a priest about to hit a girl, but Nike stops him. This angers him, so he goes in to hit her, but another man stops him before he can strike. He introduces himself as Rani and apologizes on behalf of the priest for trying to strike her. He tells her that her power is very impressive, which makes Nike wonder why the king is so against him. Then suddenly Rani tells her that she is a bad omen to the kingdom and she doesn't belong with the king. After this, he tells Nike that the only person who would pick someone like her is the foolish king. He tells her that his mother was a peasant and that they worked hard to get rid of her. Despite this, the king still ascended to the throne, leaving an everlasting anger with Rani. This enrages Nike, so she attempts to fight back, but the maid stops her. Rani tells her that if she wants to gain his trust, then she needs to take the trial. As he walks away, Nike wonders if all she does is bring bad luck. She contemplates leaving the palace and giving the king some alone time, so that he doesn't have to deal with people like Rani. The maid then tells her to calm down, and she offers to guide Nike to somewhere beautiful. They arrive at an orphanage in the boonies, and the maid informs Nike that these children have been neglected recently. Following this, one of the children emerges and tells Nike she is a beautiful queen. She then asks if the king is coming, telling her that he always comes to pick flowers for her. The girl tells Nike that whenever the king visits, he tells them how beautiful Nike is. This makes Nike wonder if she has the right to stay, so she heads back to the palace. Once she gets there, she goes to comfort the king, telling him he looked cute while sleeping. Then when he gets out of bed, he is stunned to see a large number of roses on his bed. She then tells him that she wants to take the trial to force the others to accept her. This makes the king feel bad for making her do such things, so he tells her that he will be waiting. Nike then shares her feelings with the king, telling him he doesn't need to fight alone anymore. Contrary to what she was expecting, the king gets angry instead of happy, telling Nike that she needs to just do what he says. Despite this, he accepts her choice and presents the ring that his mother gave to him. This makes Nike happy, so she proclaims that she will come out safely. Following this, she heads to the place of the trial, where Rani explains the rules of the trial to her. With the exit being sealed, she isn't allowed to exit until she either dies or completes the trial. When she goes to enter, the king tells her that he believes in her, urging her to stay safe inside. Once the gates close, Rina walks away, expecting Nike to fail, making the king angry. After looking around the maze for a bit, she realizes she has no idea where she is going. With no clue which direction to go, she decides to follow some random path. After she goes that way, the ground collapses, making her realize how severe the situation is. Despite this, however, she continues exploring, determined to finish the trial. Eventually, she arrives at a huge temple within the maze, making her wonder when this was built. She continues exploring until she arrives at a place where she needs to light a fire. After she does this, flames erupt around her, leading to her doing the next task. She looks under the statue for a ring, but to her surprise it's nowhere to be found, making her realize they tricked her. Following this, men surround her and tell her that she doesn't deserve to ascend to the throne alongside the king. They tell her that not only is she a foreign princess, but she is also a threat to their religion. After hearing this, Nike strikes back, grabbing the torch and swinging it towards the man. He dodges and displays that he isn't just any grunt. Nike then puts the fire out, causing confusion within the guards and allowing her to flee. As she runs, she thinks she is safe, however a mysterious figure behind her grabs her. The guards, on the other hand, seem to have lost Nike because this mysterious figure was the king. He informs Nike that he knew something was up, telling her he came to save her. Nike asks him how he just happened to appear at the perfect time, but he silences her. With guards running around, he tells her to stay quiet as he explains how he got there, using a tunnel known only to the royal family. Nike then thanks him but asks why he came to spy on her. He tells her that it's not that he didn't trust her, but rather he just cared for her safety more. They then move on to finding a way out, with the king telling Nike he will abolish this trial once he is out. During this, the guards talk amongst each other until they stop when a fog overtakes them. It is revealed that Nike is controlling the water underneath them to create an illusion of fog. After she hotboxes the place, the two of them run out to their freedom. Once they get outside, the king asks Nike how she is able to not only create rain, but control it as well. When she attempts to explain it, a guard appears from behind her and strikes in her direction. Thankfully, the king reacts quickly and subdues the man, forcing him onto the ground. After he does so, more guards come behind him, forcing the others to run away. After this, the main guard tells the other grunts to alert Rina that the king interfered. As the two run, Nike runs out of breath and tells the king that they need to go back for the ring he lost. He turns and tells her that he doesn't care about the ring, her being much more important. The king expresses his feelings towards Nike, telling her he couldn't continue being a king without her. This makes her realize that despite the king being a king, he is still just a child. She recognizes it as her fault and apologizes to the king for doing something so reckless. She thanks him for coming to her rescue while apologizing for not realizing how much he cared for her. After she does this, she decides to give the king a kiss, only on the forehead, of course. She tells him that she didn't know what else she should do to help him. Following this, she asks him to keep her around and continue being the king he is. After hearing this, the king realizes what his mother really meant when she gave him the ring. Once they have their moment together, Nike makes sure to remind him of his place, telling him he is a brat. After this, she asks him what they are going to do, to which he tells her he has a plan. They then arrive back at the palace, where the king shows Nike his various officials and how they are able to help him. With their different qualities and strengths, their combined forces are called the Four Gods. Within this room, everything is decided between the three and the king, but little to the common folk know. Nothing serious happens within this room. When the king enters, all he hears is the old geezers talking about how big Nike's chest is. During this meeting, Nike fits into a new dress, tighter than ever before. After she is dressed into her wedding dress, she walks out to the king, who is impressed by her beauty. He tells her this for the first time, making Nike finally feel appreciated. Even Neil can't believe it, so he tears up after finally hearing the king express himself. Although they are prepared to fight, they are still unsure how they will win against the priests. To start, they head to an area exposed to all the public, where Rina wonders what the king could be planning. They then prepare to start the marriage, where Nike presents the empty ring box to the high priest. She asks why it is empty, to which Nike explains that she believed the ring to not be valuable enough for her. The king then joins in and tells the crowd that rather than having a ring on her finger, she will put a ring on the sun. Then following this, Nike begins singing and takes control of the air around her. By using her words, she is able to guide the air into doing as she says, like a spirit. She reveals that this was the king's idea, putting a large water ring around the sun. Although Nike is unsure whether she can successfully perform this trick, she does it anyways, and ends up succeeding. Once the audience sees this, they become impressed, making the persists erupt. One of the persists tells the crowd that it was all rigged, and she failed the trial. After hearing this, the head priest asks Rina if this is true, exposing him in the process. The king then joins in the conversation and informs the high priest that this was all his plan to assassinate Nike. Rina then informs the others that the king interrupted their trial and they were forced to act. He explains that through their kingdom's existence they have always had a child of the sun as a princess. Despite him explaining why he did it, the head priest decides he still needs to be punished. Nike takes on the role and tells him she will give him his punishment, striking him in the face. After she strikes him down, she tells Rina that despite his ill intent, she will forgive him. Then the king emerges and tells him that the queen's verdict is final. After this, the two head onto a terrace where, despite only having half the ring, they feel closer than ever. After the celebration, the kingdom is in an overall swell mood with her constant rains. To start off the day, she decides to sing to the kingdoms to bring rain forth. The commoners all tell each other they are so lucky to have Nike, telling the other they would have a hard time farming without her. After she displays her skills, one of the farmers tries to take Nike's hand in marriage, but the king interrupts them. He fires the cannon as a call for her to go home, making the farmer unable to wed Nike. Overwatching her is a blonde girl on board a horse, making you wonder what she is planning. Once Nike gets home, she goes to complain to the king, asking if he does anything all day but stalks her. Neil then interrupts her and asks if she needs to take another class for her manners. The king then tells Nike that he is right, and she needs to start acting more like a queen. He asks to be called by his name, but Nike is interrupted by a small girl named Luna. She rushes to the king's side and hugs him, making Nike a bit jealous of the turn of events. Luna tells the king that she misses him a lot, wishing they could take baths again like they used to. She then tells the king that it's okay because they swore to marry each other years back. Following this, she is introduced as the princess of the Ocean Kingdom and a close friend to the king. She tells Nike that she is his rightful bride, but he protests, telling her to stop acting like a child. He then presents Nike to her, telling her that she is much less developed than she is. Luna takes this as a chance to see for herself, so she goes and gropes Nike. After confirming that Nike is indeed better looking than she is, she attempts to diminish her slowly, by displaying better elegance than her, and outshining Nike at every task. She begins to wonder what to do. Little does she know, however, the king doesn't care about any of this, only wanting Nike. He then shares with Nike of their past, telling her that they used to hang out a lot. She would present him cookies and such, making the two's bond close. Nike gets jealous after hearing this, but is interrupted when the king enters her bed and undresses. He tells her that now that they are married, he should get some service. Luna overhears this and gets in the middle of them, telling Nike she is an improper woman. The next day, Nike shares what happened with Neil while they dance, but they are interrupted by the king and Luna. Luna proposes to dance with the king, telling him that she is a much better dancer than Nike. He accepts, and the two begin dancing around the ballroom, taking the maids by storm. They watch the two dance, and more people enter the room, commenting on how well the two fit together. After overhearing this, Nike runs away, but she is stopped by Luna, telling her she isn't fit for him. She informs Nike that she brings shame upon the Sun Kingdom, and that she ought to step down already. This makes Nike depressed, so she decides to go and cry inside of the palace church. The king finds her like this, and wonders what he can do to show her that he cares more about her than Luna. He thinks of the time when he first met Luna, and when the two proposed to marry each other. The king's original plan was to flee the kingdom once he got of age, but he ended up being the king. Luna reveals that once his mother died, he was immediately announced the king, and he turned cold to her. When she tried to talk to him as they always did, he was different, making her scared. During this, Nike attempts to get better at dancing, but is unable to see any results. When she sits down to give up, the king emerges and gives her some tea. He tells her that he is proud of her efforts, but she doesn't need to try so hard. He reminds her of everything they have been through, telling her he will never give her up. He then offers to help her dance, so the two practice together into the night. The next day, Luna approaches Nike and challenges her to a race. The king tries to protest, but Nike resolves herself and accepts the challenge. Although she has a rough start, Nike doesn't give up and overtakes Luna, showing she is the one for the king. As she begins to pull away, Luna realizes she needs to make a move, but when she does, she falls off her horse. While she is falling, she realizes she was wrong when Nike uses her powers to save her. Luna then admits her defeat and heads back to the palace in a sorrowful state. The king witnesses this, so he goes to comfort her, telling her that Nike isn't just any girl but a spirit wielder. After hearing this, Luna decides to go and apologize to Nike the following day. As they talk, she decides that she wants to see what the king was talking about, so she asks to sing for her. Nike then begins to sing her song and summon rain, which forces Luna into tears. After these events, Nike and the king talk to each other in his office while eating. The king takes a bite of his pear, then tricks Nike into giving him a kiss, it being the Virgin King's first ever kiss.